It feels like ever since the saga behind the scenes began earlier this year that there have been rumored exits left, right and center at Red Bull. Up until yesterday evening, all of this amounted to hearsay and rumor to prod and poke everyone at the team with over media days. However, all of that has now changed with the announcement that legendary car designer Adrian Newey will be leaving Red Bull after 2 decades of service to the team. The exit of the man responsible for multiple championship-winning cars across multiple teams, as well as being the man whose aero single-handedly made Red Bull a frightening prospect at Monaco, even on years where they lacked performance elsewhere, seems to have caught Red Bull fairly off guard, and it both comes as a herald for further insecurity into the new regulations, as well as being possibly a reaction to said scrutiny in the first place. There's a lot of questions and theories floating around out there in response to this news, so join us as we take you through the current information we have on the Adrian Newey saga, from the factual to the tinfoil. Want to know why Adrian Newey has decided he's had enough of Red Bull? After nearly 2 decades of loyalty, what has finally pushed him over the edge? And stick around to find out where he may end up in the near future. And just like that, the cat is out of the bag. Following weeks of suppositions about Newey and his future, Automotor and Sport reported on Thursday that they believed something was amiss at Red Bull in regards to the car designer, which was then further substantiated by Craig Slater at Sky late on Friday evening. Following the German auto magazine's report suggesting that an informal notice had been given, this is what Craig Slater reported. It's a fluid situation, but there is definitely substance to the notion that Adrian Newey has decided he wants to leave Red Bull, and he has turned his thoughts, in effect, away from the team. That's what several senior figures close to Newey have been telling me. He has communicated informally with some senior Red Bull figures that he would like to leave the team. Now, clearly, an informal notice is about as substantial as an F1 driver's contract. However, the fact that it's coming from multiple sources, as well as Red Bull's sheepish statement in response to the situation, indicates that there is indeed upcoming movement in regard to Adrian Newey's future. The Red Bull statement merely lays out when Newey is contracted until, as well as saying that as far as they are aware, he hasn't contacted any other teams about future employment, which is by no means a "no, he's not leaving, discussions haven't taken place." Here's what Red Bull had to say in response to being contacted regarding the chief technical officer's desire to leave the team. Adrian is contracted until at least the end of 2025, and we are unaware of him joining any other team. The key question in all of this is why? Why now, and why leave the most dominant team of the current regulations? Well, there are many potential causes, with perhaps the most obvious one being put forward by Craig Slater. There has for a while now been a power struggle at the top of Red Bull, branching years back and creating a rift between the likes of Newey and Horner, whose professional bond was so strong that they used to have exit clauses linked to each other's contract which would let one walk if the other one was given the axe. This hasn't been the case for some time now, and while the situation has certainly stabilized, it's by no means the anchoring factor that it used to be. I think perhaps this Newey news is more to do with the power struggle that has been in the background to the Horner situation. It has been destabilizing. It will have been a factor, I think, in making him question to what extent his future lies with the team. I have been reporting for the last few months that the key relationship at Red Bull between Newey and Horner has cooled. There has been more of a distance between them over these last months than there has previously, and that has had to do with some of the friction going on behind the scenes at Red Bull. As well as the power struggle, Slater would also go on to say that he believed Newey may have felt undervalued at the team, with public announcements from Red Bull never really giving the car designer full credit for his achievements. The perceived power struggle there, and also the fact that Newey, on occasion, given certain comments that have been made, has had his role within the team and his influence on designing these championship-winning cars perhaps rather undervalued with some of the comments that have come out from Red Bull. However, in our opinion, the timing of this cannot really be ignored, and we feel that there are perhaps other reasons beyond personal that Newey may be looking to jump ship. If Red Bull are correct in their belief that Newey will see out the remainder of his contract through until the end of 2025, could his decision to depart before the new regulations even start give some credence to the rumors surrounding Red Bull powertrains not being up to standard? Clearly, Red Bull's ties with Ford have been somewhat strained at the start of this year. However, it's not expected that Ford will make any moves moves to break their current agreement. However, the word going around is the Red Bull's first in-house engine project is not nearly as far along the line as it needs to be at this point. Now, obviously this has been denied by Red Bull, but excuses being put out early such as it's our first time making an engine and we're competing with long-standing engine manufacturers have already started to emerge from the team. Adrian Newey at 65 will want to be in the best place possible for his cars to succeed. After all, this may be the last set of regulations that he remains in the sport for, and being at a team with no experience with engine design outside of what Honda left them and partnering with Ford, whose last soiree into Formula One didn't exactly end well, may not fill Newey with nearly enough confidence to want to stick around and be left with no options for success to come in 2026. Whether due to a lack of potential being displayed or something more sinister regarding Ford, given that they expected family values and instead were met with smoke, mirrors and supposed WhatsApp messages, the lack of experience, track record and potential insecurity surrounding the engine program may well have played just as big of a role in Newey's decision as his personal reasons. He is after all a consummate professional, so while he would clearly take how he feels into consideration, a lack of potential to perform would likely push him out the door far quicker. So what next for Newey? There's been a lot of speculation regarding where he would move if he chose to do so over the past few weeks, with Aston Martin and Ferrari being the prime candidates that were put forward and supposedly in talks. But which would be the direction he would most likely go in? Well, an Aston Martin insider may have just revealed that the Silverstone team may not even themselves believe that Newey would forego the opportunity to join the Scuderia. According to Craig Slater, there's been speculation that Ferrari have tried to sign him, and also that Aston Martin were hoping to perhaps entice him to work there. That would certainly be an easier move in logistical terms for Newey because they are based at Silverstone. Ferrari have been trying for over 20 years to sign Adrian Newey and have been unsuccessful in that. But some insiders within Aston Martin have been explaining to me that they think if he goes somewhere else, it would be Ferrari potentially, so let's see. This apparently followed Aston Martin presenting Newey with a big money offer at the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix, which seemingly was rebuffed by Newey given that sources at Aston Martin believe Ferrari is the more likely option. Ferrari seems to be the prime destination for Newey to potentially see out the remainder of his career for multiple reasons. However, the most pertinent being Newey's interview at the back end of last year where he was asked if he regretted never going to Ferrari, to which he replied, "Emotionally, I guess, to a point, yes. But just as, for instance, working with Fernando and Lewis would have been fabulous, but it never happened. It's just circumstance sometimes. That's the way it is." Not only would joining Ferrari resolve one of these regrets, it would also grant the legendary car designer the opportunity to work with Lewis Hamilton, who, while some of you may not like him, is held in incredibly high regard by Adrian Newey. The other, perhaps sadder option to envisage, and one we hope will not happen, is that Newey will go out on top. Having devoted decades of his life to the sport, with a higher and higher personal weight appearing especially over the last decade, Adrian would be, perhaps more so than anyone else in the sport, entitled to a restful retirement, one where he can finally be at peace. This is something which could be somewhat enforced if Newey has a requirement for gardening leave in his contract, something which would see him rejoin the paddock as late as 2027. However, at that point he will be approaching his 70s and had a year out the game, something which can be pretty brutal especially at a later age. Regardless of what happens next, Newey is taking it as it comes and seems at peace with what his future holds, as he recently said, "I think as long as I continue to enjoy it and the team wants me, then I'll continue to do it for the moment and then we'll have to see in the future. I don't tend to plan too far forward."